So with our land acknowledgement, as we begin this meeting, it's important to pay respect to and acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Ohlone, Costanoan, and Esselen people, and additionally pay respect to elders both past and present. With that, may I get a roll call vote, Dr. Adamson?
Absolutely, yes. President Dr. Hazen.
I'm still here.
Clerk McNary.
Here.
Trustee Otmar.
Here.
Trustee Shamas.
Here.
And Trustee Wax.
Here. Okay, great. And we have a very short agenda tonight, but a very important one, focusing on governance. And we open up now, looking over this to see if there's any public comment about our agenda that folks would like to comment on. Seeing none, I'll go to the board. Any concerns, questions, complaints? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Can I get a second? A second. Hey, Trustee Otmar, Trustee Wax to the punch. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? If not, it passes unanimously 5-0. And so we'll now go to a closed session to talk about 5 potential items: negotiations, collective bargaining session, planning and prep between PGTA for 25-26, Government Code 3549.1. Collective bargaining session, planning and prep with CSEA for 25-26, same government code. Public employee discipline, dismissal, release, leave, complaint, Government Code 54957. Public employee discipline, dismissal, release, same government code, and then a confidential student update. Do we have any public comment on those closed session topics? Given none, at 5:32, I will adjourn us to closed session. See you guys back here at 6, hopefully. Okay, it's 6:34, and I will report out on closed session items. We had 2 things discussed. In terms of item E, confidential student update, information was received. In terms of public employee discipline, dismissal, release, the Board of Trustees in closed session held on September 18th, 2025, voted to adopt the September 11th, 2025 ALJ decision upholding the dismissal of employee ID 161507 from their position as paraprofessional as the decision of the Board of Trustees, and that the classified employee be notified of the board's decision. And the vote in closed session passed 5-0. So with that, I think we now go to the Pledge of Allegiance. Beth, would you mind leading us in the pledge tonight?
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So now we have consent agenda, and just a reminder that the items have either been discussed at a previous board meeting or are regularly considered. So there's no discussion unless a member of the board requests the item be discussed or pulled. And so we'll start with, I guess it's just 2 items, items A and B. Is there any public comment on consent agenda tonight? Seeing none, I will go now to the board. Anything you guys would like to pull or? Yes. Seeing no one reach for their mic, we are then looking for a motion to pass consent.
I'll make a motion to approve consent as presented.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made by Clerk McNary, seconded by Trustee Wax. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It passes 5-0. So now we have the information discussion items of the CSBA board policy updates. First reading part 2. So this is yours, Dr. Adamson.
Well, I will go ahead and just give a quick introduction, and then I would love, Trustee Shamas and was definitely, and Trustee Otmar were part of that most recent policy committee meeting. I remember this is part 2 of all of the policies. We had a big chunk that were in our last board meeting. So this is the second portion. The majority of them are all, just really required updates that we receive from CSBA. But if there are any on there and that you want to discuss or have specific questions about, we can have that chance to talk about them now. Trustee Shamas, was there anything you wanted to point the board's attention to? No. All right, good. So really at this point, remember, this is a first reading, and if all agree, we will bring them back at the October 2nd meeting on consent for official approval.
Excellent. So I think now we will go out to the public again. See if there's any public comment on this item. Seeing none in public. Anyone from the board would like to comment on the first read? I'll just say quickly, thank you so much for the attention to these. I know it's a lot. I'm happy to see some of the things we've discussed previously coming up here. So it's good to see us moving in that right direction. So much appreciated. If not, I think we don't, I guess our direction would be to go ahead and bring these back on consent.
Yeah, so it
Okay.
comes back for the second reading.
Okay, and now we'll be breaking and everyone can bring your mics to this small table for our board governance training and self-evaluation. What a year.
Yeah, I can see over there.
You should all wear them.
Right, well, definitely,
Tonight.
Oh, I gotta go mine.
That's good.
Yeah, and other functions, and because wearing my, sometimes I'll go visit something and wearing my badge, it's like, it doesn't feel.
No. So
I mean, you look more official.
Yeah.
Yes. It's official.
We'll write down our responses to two questions based on.
Oh,
Yeah.
little bit, yeah, yeah.
I felt bad, but I felt like that was. It's kind of what Annie.
Yeah, no, keep them.
Wrap party?
I hope we don't.
Session. So you'll see you all have your index card that you'll remember you filled out at our last session, and we, I've kept them safely in our little governance energy bus team envelope. So here they are. And really remember, we're going to do another little activity today that sort of will allow you the opportunity to maybe add to, what you've written. So we'll get to that in just a moment. As far as the agenda for today, Director Binder, would you mind just going up onto the next slide? Sure. We're going to start with that activity. We have our core governance, chapters 1 and 2. So we'll take some time to discussions. How not to be a terrible board member activity. We're going to follow up on that as well. And then at our last meeting, we had really talked about what came through in our reading, of the book was just the importance of a self-evaluation process. And Trustee Shamas pointed out to us that it's in our board policy as well. And so we're going to have some time to discuss this. And I know that Lou Lozana and Eric Andrews have worked with us the past year with that, and they are available for our next meeting on October 23rd. So we'll talk about that a little bit if we would like for them to come in and really just lead us through that process. And I think the main topics for next session more in depth. All right, so I think the next slide really just reminds us of the two questions I'd asked each of you to reflect on and give a response to, and that was what you all wrote on your index card. It was, what kind of energy will you bring to our governance team this year? And what kind of energy do you hope we will create together? So on the next slide, what I've done is really just kind of get give us the opportunity to reflect on a few different things. You're going to have a chance to maybe sort of update a little of what you have here. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to maybe do any of the reading in the energy bus. There was no expectation. It was your book for your own purposes. But as you know, we're really doing that as a book study with our leadership teams and also the district office staff. So we are every 2 weeks or so we are doing at least 2 chapters at a time, and we're engaging in different activities that will allow us to talk about it. So that's been really fun. We're at the point where we're moving on to the first rule, which is you are the driver of your bus. And I thought that would just be kind of a nice place for us to really focus on a little as part of this activity. So when you read through what you'd written on your index card about the energy you're bringing and the energy you'd like us to create as a team, I would like you to not only reflect, but then think about those 2 questions in slightly different, through a slightly different lens. The first one, what kind of energy am I currently bringing to the governance team, right? So it's, you wrote last time what you hope to, and I really we'll have just a few minutes to think about, are you living up to that? And what kind of energy do I hope that we create together, we continue to? So I think what we're going to do is just take a few minutes. If you want to make any adjustments to your card, update it. And then we will move into the second part of the activity. Just maybe 2 minutes or so. Just writing on your index card right now. Okay, so I think what we, when you're talking about, and in the book, when they talk about you being the driver of your bus, I think the key summary to that is, as the driver of our own bus, right, we get to choose our attitude, our energy, and the influence that we have. And no matter what the situation, we get to decide how we react to that situation. Feel like, we're not, even if we feel we're not in control, what we can control is our response. So that question, if you're the driver of your governance bus, what direction are you choosing to take? I think that speaks to the fact that, yes, we are, even in reading chapters 1 and 2 of the core governance, book, it really talks about the sense that, yeah, we're individuals, but we're also, a part of a larger team. And that doesn't mean that we're giving up, our ability to, be individual thinkers, right? It's just about how we're working together to create more of a coherent team. So, I think how the energy we bring and how we choose to interact with the team depends so much start with ourselves. So that's where really that question comes to, right? You're the driver of your bus, right? Think about the direction that you're choosing to take yourself in context of the fact that, we're part of a large team. I think what I'd like to do is really just sort of pair up, just have conversations to share out a little based on those 3 bullets: the personal energy you're bringing, the energy you hope the team will create, and one way you're choosing to be the driver of your bus intentionally. Yeah. 4 minutes. And then what I'd like for you to each of you highlight with your partner is you want to call out one thing that kind of inspired you. You're going to share out for your partner. Thanks. Want to break up? Okay. Okay. All right. Do it. Start with maybe 3 minutes for now.
Thank you.
I know. That's so it's horrible. Don't you can't read it.
Like that.
All right.
Yeah.
I wrote.
I wrote for. Here's what are these? I said it's. And I also said. Well, yeah. And energy, I like the team will create. I wrote. Respectful, collaborative, creative energy, but I also feel like I.
What kind of energy do we create?
Hard. So often. Finding. The moment then we just find the right and the positivity to myself. Thinking how we can wondering how to be the driver intentionally. And I know that probably we're selfish, but like not sure if I'm yeah. What kind of energy is like
You get extra points.
I'm like I'm abilities. Right, because any given day you're like, oh, I'm 100% home, right? 80%, like, am I showing up? Yeah. There you go. What about you? What kind of person are you?
I think I did.
And she.
Energy and purpose. Like I
Yeah.
go out here.
That's just.
Getting here.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I.
Great energy.
Share this with
This time I really will perform it.
Okay, so wait a minute. One way you're using to be just like plus intentionally.
I mean, but like, it's just another. Yeah, it's like
Crazy is.
growth and how. Feels like, yeah, like expanding our stuff. I like that.
But I should.
You're like, my bus is doing. Right, fit in the shop.
One way to choose happy driver. Intention.
Someone was hot.
Well, that would go back to your first.
I don't know.
The kind of energy.
I don't know who's
Yeah.
here, but.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other one too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Process, you look for record often.
Yeah.
But-
You know, when I see something, I really feel like, okay, this and all the things that I will bring that.
I feel like.
This is everything.
So
So
I feel confident.
So,
in my
but
thing
what direction?
to the rest of the board. I mean, and they don't want to go on.
Right.
Yes, I feel like I'm comfortable at least in
I marked it.
bringing up something that I feel the board's in the ground.
You are, that's true.
So then we share out this.
Share out.
And then we go back together.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. That's perfect.
Yes.
That's great.
So many.
Do we really need to share? Do you need a few jobs?
My best, we drink back there. Someone's been home since all night. There's like cans rolling around.
Yes.
Party bus? Oh my gosh.
We were just talking about how a year has
gone as far as a drive in a bus.
My energy bus.
That's a great way
Her
of
tires
life.
are flat and
Yeah,
gas,
that's-
yeah, stipends. Right?
That's, oh, I love that
Because that
analogy.
is-
That's,
there's, like,
that's
camp
powerful.
around. Just but you stay on and you keep.
That's it, exactly.
One-
Keep on,
one-
keep on keeping on. Oh, that's awesome. Love it.
Let's be.
It smells weird. Being in the passenger seat.
Outside or.
Okay, are we ready to do a share out? Yes. So remember, you're going to be sharing out something that inspired you about something that your teammate said. So one would like to start us out.
I can start. I don't mind being the, so I think one of the points that Linda brought up was trying to every day come with unity and joy. And I paraphrased a bit, but I think it was a good way. We double checked this, but trying to find bright spots even in dark places.
I'll go on what Elliot said. I think for him, what stood out to me was, how are we moving forward and making decisions, always keeping things in the passenger seat in mind. It was a great analogy because, the whole bus thing. And then another one he said that stood out was if we say yes to something, we need to be prepared to say no to something else. Constantly.
For the financials.
For financials. Right.
That is only that she wants to be doing a respectful and happy ending. And that's good stuff. But one point one. We're just going to move on.
Just one thing that stood out.
Okay.
Stopping the whole conversation. Yep. Okay.
Yes, well, what stood out to me was that Mike said, about being the driver of your bus, that he, as a newbie, feels more like the passenger. And yet, as a passenger, also feels comfortable pointing out scenic distraction. I like that. It does.
Stop.
I love it. Thank you. That making notes as we go, just capturing it. Yes. Okay, that's beautiful. All right, how about Mary and Ahmad?
I'll go first. So Jen talked about what stood out to me was talking about the energy that she hopes that we create together this year is a joyful energy. It's bringing joy. And also acknowledging that there should be time within the space that we are making here, or within it, what we're doing here for self-care. Because if you aren't caring for yourself, you can't show up and give fully unless you're taking time for yourself and caring for yourself.
What stood out to me about what Laura said was the personal energy that she is bringing, and that's purposeful energy. Every time that she shows up to a meeting and walks into the room, she shows up with intention and focus.
That's beautiful. Okay.
Did you say something?
I don't remember Elliot shared out for me with the looking for bright spots, dark faces, and
We need bus metaphors for all of us.
hello.
Turn off your mics, I'll tell you.
Doing the break. All right. Well, if there's anything else you want to add to your index card, go ahead and do so. I'll collect them at the end of our meeting, and we'll continue to serve as our source of reference, right? If the continues, I think.
Well, if I could just add
Yes,
something.
please.
Yes, you're all the driver of your own bus. So what's important is, like, if you're listening to someone else who's driving his bus, to remember that you're not the driver, that what you're listening to is is this person is the driver in that time. Because I use that little example, like in communication, like when you're listening to someone else, you know, that person's the driver. You're in the passenger seat when you're the listener. And it just reminded me of that. And because that's kind of a good way to be able to validate someone. And just remembering, you know, like you're not the driver right now. So don't try to put your interpretation on what you just heard, you know, just validate what this driver said.
A segue to chapter 2.
Is it?
Oh, I thought that's beautiful. I captured that. It's beautiful. Wow. Thank you for that. And I do, if you haven't, you know, taken time in there, even if you just focus on the different rules that, you know, in that book, it's really just well and easy to read. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hand this out because the next slide, I thought, if you recall during our discussions last time of chapter 7 and 8, you know, we had some it was just really valuable information that all of you have shared. So I had been taking notes the whole time, and I have a summary, thanks to our very good friend. May begin with the letter C. Or if, you know, Lewis is listening to me, it's, you know, Cameron, right? Additional copies, please. Do you mind sharing my, just so I don't have one to drink? Oh, do we have enough? No, that's, yeah. Well, I'm so sorry. I'll give you this one to take with you, Faith, but just so I've got it to, yeah, I'm so sorry. So really, this is just a summary of, you know, chapter 7 and 8. And, you know, I love, you know, kind of how it sort of just highlighted some of the themes. Like it's a one-pager. The second page is specific to, you know, our discussions on what we called out from the How Not to Be a Terrible Board Member. But as far as the, you know, governance training, we looked at what we talked about through our strengths, you know, that really we wanted to highlight on how we're living out our board norms, right? That there's, you know, definitely through showing a clear commitment and accountability. There was definite agreement, our governance handbook with the new revision, right? Well organized, well designed, accessible, and actionable. You know, that our dedicated governance meetings provide, you know, needed time for reflection and collaboration. And that we have a strong board chemistry and trust that we've really been working on and building together, working through some really hard challenges together. And we really took some time, you know, to kind of use some examples there. So yeah, I think that was really powerful. And I think just important for us to take time as well to reflect on and, you know, remind before we go into, you know, our discussions for chapters 1 and 2 today. Some areas that we identified that we maybe need to look at to strengthen and work together on as a team. The self-evaluation posters came out, right? That's something we definitely need to identify a tool that we can, you know, use as a part of that process. Just in general, our discussions about board meetings, we talked a lot about trying to have as much discussion and available information, you know, before moving to and having to make decisions on action items. Really looking at the agenda design and pacing to avoid feeling, you know, rushed when it comes to some of those decisions. And that ensures staff are clearly, you know, communicating timelines, right? So, you know, how long you've got and when items absolutely need to, you know, come back for action. The topic of onboarding, you know, definitely came up on how we onboard, you know, new members. And in scenario planning, you know, really allowing for time for, you know, what if discussions, you know, emergency disruptions was, you know, one example that came up there. So, yeah, just in general, I think that's really nice, I think, for us to have as we're, you know, reflecting back on what we've identified. I think this is really important information I'm able to, you know, sort of share with our cabinet as well, right? As, you know, we're working together as a staff to bring items forward. So it's really helpful. You know, those discussions really give us, you know, just strong, solid, you know, tools and direction on, you know, we need to work on as well, right? And preparing everything for our meetings. There was a strong discussion about staying mission aligned. You know, keeping student outcomes, equity and access at the forefront, reinforcing our culture of we in our governance practices, and then improving transparency and reporting of board actions to the community. There were, you know, 1 or 2 examples that were shared there that, you know, we really felt that we maybe did more of it on the back end of it, but how, you know, we can be more sort of forward thinking and proactive, right, on some topics. And then as far as future opportunities, some things that came up through our discussions, he was trying to include our student trustees, right, in as many, opportunities as possible, maybe, designing a future governance session where we could, invite them to. And then there was talk about, CSBA, but what's happened since then is NCOE came out with their full-day training. And I don't know if you recall last year, we weren't able to do it because it fell during October break. And this year it's in November. So we had all 4 of them committed. Principal Amira is going to be coming. It's a full day at NCOE. They do an excellent job. I attended 2 years ago with him. We are able to take 2 trustees, and I know already, I think that I think Trustee McNary has said yes. Anything else? I think I first asked our president and clerk. President Hazen is not able to do it. So for the 3 of you, if you are wanting to and available for that day, you're welcome to join us. But if not, Trustee McNary is able to serve as the board representative for that. And it is, hold on, quickly go up and see, November.
November 13th.
Thank you.
Thursday, November 13th.
And it'll be, it's a big chunk of the day. I think it starts at 9:30. It's in 7 minutes at NCOE, so we will leave around 8:30. We're going to take a van, so we'll travel together, and then I think it ends at 2:30. So we'll be back here, to start 3:30. Fun day, and if you're able to, we'd love to have you. So we have to look at your schedule and let you know. Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Let's see, and then, just overall, I think what came out of that, that we really, I think there was agreement amongst everyone. We have a solid governance infrastructure, since that was a big part of the discussions and the topic and the focus from chapter 7 and 8. Definitely strong collaboration as a board. We all really felt, that sense of, team and how we work and the coherence of which we work together. But that growth definitely will come from refining our meeting practices, onboarding transparency and self-evaluation, while staying aligned to our mission and core values. What do you think? It's pretty cool, huh? I was excited. I was reading through those notes. So, I think I really was still typing a lot as we were talking, but I'm going to try to do the same today because there's so much value, I think, in what happened as we're holding those discussions. So this can also serve as sort of just our ongoing direction as well for us as a board. All right. Well, so with that in mind, as we started last time, I think it would be important for us to just review our norms on page 6. And I don't know if you all noticed, but a request that came out of our last meeting was to have the handbook printed, and you all have it in your binder, so that will remain in there with all of the 9,000s, Trustee Moss. So you'll have that as a reference, and of course, we always have it, online as well. But the rest of binder, I wonder if you could possibly just click on the link of the handbook, just so you can put it up on the screen, and just go to page, page 6 for us. And like we did last time, we just had, it's on the slide of the presentation. Thank you. It's in the presentation. There's a link there. Yeah, that just links directly to it. Last time we all read out one of the norms, since there's 6 of them. Comfortable doing that again. That's page 6. Thank you. Well, we need to link them, huh? So it clicks directly to that. Yes. That's perfect. Thank you. All right, I'll go ahead and read number 1, accountability. We take collective responsibility for the performance and success of our governance team. Each trustee contributes to maintaining trust, transparency, and the integrity of board operations while staying focused on what's best for students. Don't want to read number 2. Thank you.
It's all starting. Competence and judiciousness. We commit to acting as informed, thoughtful, and ethical stewards of public education. We honor our roles, avoid micromanagement, and collaborate constructively. Through professional development, preparation, and respectful conduct, we model effective leadership and focus on the district's long-term vision.
Number 3, ethics and integrity. We uphold the highest standards of ethical conduct, fairness, and transparency. We adhere to the Brown Act and only discuss issues in adherence with the Brown Act. We do not engage in serial or multi-board member conversations outside of board meetings. We avoid conflicts of interest, honor confidentiality, and do not use our positions for personal gain. Trust is maintained through honesty, discretion, and a shared commitment to integrity in all interactions.
We value our collective impact over individual interests and personal opinions. Personal disagreements are addressed privately and respectfully. We maintain a united front, engage in thoughtful deliberation, and avoid personal attacks, ensuring our decisions are grounded in student-centered governance.
Yes. We prioritize open, honest, and respectful communication. Differences of opinion are welcomed and discussed civilly. Once decisions are made, we speak with one voice to foster public trust and avoid undermining the work or reputation of the board or superintendent.
Respect and consideration. We treat one another as equal partners in leadership, showing courtesy, empathy, and appreciation for each other's contribution. We avoid gossip or personal complaints, support the superintendent's role, and respect each other's time, motivations, and perspectives.
Okay, thank you for pulling those up. Going back to the slides, and we can go straight to slide 8. Which is just that, that's it. Effective governance isn't about control, it's about coherence, collaboration, and the courage to lead. Out of the book, I used it last time. The next slide just really talks about the review summary, which we've done already. So I'm going on to the next slide. This is chapter 1, just an overview, and I've really have structured it very much like we did, last time, with just a summary, and then we've got some guided questions on the next slide. Allow each of you to just bring in maybe some of the highlights out to you from that first chapter. I think what really stood out some of the key things for me that, it talks a lot about governance being a mindset. It's not just about compliance. And I think, that quote at the bottom, I found that on page 19, governance is not just about passing policy. It's about what boards and superintendents do together. That should be and how they do it. The board should be the ultimate coherence maker. I love that, that component. Again, that's not to say that it's, everyone's losing their, how we, come together in the end, right, to be able to move forward with a decision. It's part of how we work together. Go ahead, sure. No, my God, please.
Well, isn't this in the bullet point number 2, it's this clear separation of governance versus management how? And then governance is not just about passing policy, it's about what board and superintendents do together and how they do it.
Yeah, okay.
So
You think that's a conflict?
I mean,
Conflicting.
I was going to say, to me, it's how they do the governance, not the how of the decision making, right? So way to say it would be like, we would say maybe we would like the district to adopt a new agenda or a new curriculum, sorry, but it's up to the administration to come up with those choices, right? So that's the how. But I could also say, you guys did a really bad job, you need a new agenda. Or I could say, let's sit down together and come up with agenda. Let's sit down together and come up with a new curriculum. And so that's where the how I do the what why is the way I interpret the quote. But I agree with you about the confusing aspects of it for sure.
Wow, thanks for calling out the scenic part as we're driving along. It's really good. No, but that's a good point. And I think even, no, I think even as I was reading that in chapter 1, it really is, the whole, governance versus management. I mean, they really sort of get into the thick of, the differences between them, but in some ways they are similar as well, right? I think even in chapter 2, there's that concept that I'll call out when we get there, but, balcony and helicopter, right? Sort of viewing things from more of a wider and more bigger perspective. And I made that connection when I read chapter 2. I brought that back, to the whole governance, right? So maybe that helps as well, but we'll get into that one. Question. And then, the discipline part, staying focused on student outcomes and mission, right? That in some way or form, I think when you talk about your commitments as an individual, but also to that, was really just the summary of pieces. If we go on to the next slide, these are the three, guiding questions that I thought could help our discussion and help each of you, pull out what you thought. Number one, in thinking about what you've read in chapter 1, where do we already demonstrate a governance mindset versus a management mindset, in your opinion? Are there any areas you think? And I mean, I think the answer to that is probably yes, but I look forward to hearing from all of you on that. Number 2, how do we keep student outcomes and mission alignment at the center of decisions, even when issues are difficult? We got some examples there of how we as this governance team together have managed. And then what practices do you think we could use to strengthen trust and unity on our board while still allowing that space for health?
Well, question 1, I think I would like to hear from the superintendent. Where do we blur the lines?
I knew you were going to ask me that. You know what? I think the work we do is so important, and it's so, we talk about working, operating from the heart, and when you put students first, right? I think it's very easy. Really, sometimes it's hard to really say, okay, well, this is the line, and this is exactly where you as a board member need to stay, right? Don't, cross over to the other. It's because we bring so much different input with each of you in the role that you're in, right? Based on whether you're, a current parent, in the district, or, and parent in the district, or even just a community. Have different perspectives and conversations and relationships, right? That I influence how we make decisions. So sometimes you're coming to, it can be anything, right? That we're having to make a decision on with all of that information. And that's important, I think, for me as superintendent here. I think it's just, sometimes it will be, I've got to, then give that reminder of, okay, this is where you've brought this forward, but now there's got to be that trust, right? To staff, and we'll report back, and we can take it on and do some actions, and I'll keep you updated. But I think sometimes it's not as black and white, as that. And I don't think it should be, babe. I've got to be confident enough, and we've got to have trust enough for me to point it out.
Well, I think if I could answer for you, blurring the lines here, yes. I mean, I think you do a good job by when you meet with us one-on-one. I think what that does is give the board members the chance to give input that may be blurring lines, let's say, but here you are just one-on-one, and it's a way for you to say, okay, but this is how I feel it should be brought up to the board, or, you can guide the individual without, in a personal way. I don't know. I appreciate that about you. I think, and I think that's one way that, in our district, that you're doing it.
I have a comment. I'll choose a specific one that's going to target you, Laura, but not directly. But I mean it in a growth way, because it's actually more on me. But when we brought up the idea of, when you caught very importantly, the driver's issue on the consent item, or whether there are some forms were incorrectly checked out. That was an area where we were trying to get Josh on the spot to come up with solutions. When really, I think that was one where we would say, this form is wrong. Please correct it. And we're willing to approve a corrected form as long as there's drivers that are on it. So it's like, we are not, because, and again, I think it was important to make sure that got resolved, but it's also, we dove into some of the details in a way that probably we shouldn't have. And that's what I say, it's not on you, because it's really, I think as president, I should have been like, hey, let's back up and do this.
No, I mean, because we're all individuals, so that is on me, and you shouldn't, just because you're president, you can't take responsibility for anything that I might say, but I do think it's good that as we move through that, it was, okay, yeah, just we know that this is gonna get taken care of, and it will.
It will. And but bringing it up was the key point. It's just that and I think that sometimes we want to see, we're all problem solvers. So we want to see the solution, right? But sometimes we have to be willing to say, send it out to the ether and trust it.
And I think too, it doesn't matter how many meetings or how far into it you are or we are, the learning does not stop. Just when you think you might have a little handle on it, then all of a sudden turns out you're still learning and you'll continue to learn. I mean, this is talk about students, like we're students here, right? Consistently learning brand new things all the time. We're just not adolescents for the most part, but it continues. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because that might not have been something that stuck. And I think that conversation is important too, and not feeling bad about just saying it. I didn't take it as judged or anything.
The way I am, I beat myself up over it, because I'm like, man, I should have done this differently, right? So it's like, that's why I bring it up that way. But thank you.
Responsibility for everything, Mr. President.
Thank you, trustee therapist. I mean, trustee. No, I really appreciate it.
Well, I think that time sort of necessarily blurred the lines because of the time frame too, because the event was happening like that weekend.
It was.
We sort of had to do an on the spot solution with administration.
But what we could have done is said, we will vote to approve this, but we're approving a document only that has drivers with their information on file. So the drivers that are listed here, there have to be drivers listed on file that are already filed with the district. Otherwise, the approval does not happen. So we're not making them do that during the meeting, but that's the administration's job to do that. And then it's approved as long as that's done. And then if it's not done correctly and we end up with a driver that didn't have that certification, that's where this trust piece comes. We need to look back into protocols and figure that out.
I'd also like to point out that had I looked at it more closely prior to the meeting, that could have come up earlier, but it didn't. So these are the pieces too, where it's like, maybe I blew through consent because it's just consent. And that's a lesson that maybe it's a great idea to look at every line, because if something does come up while I'm sitting up here, I wouldn't have just breezed through the contract and figured everything's going to be fine. So again, growth is uncomfortable but necessary.
That we said we're all the students, right? We're constantly learning. As long as we all bring that mindset, to the work we do, we're in a good place. So we think you're there, that's what you said, Laura.
I'll just quickly following on Beth's point too, though, and the one-on-one is I try also to make sure that when I do start going through those blurred lines, I feel it's important as a trustee to say to Linda specifically, these are my thoughts and opinions on the how, not giving direction on what to do, but here are some ideas that, that's what I'm sharing are the ideas, but I trust in you to come up with a how, even if I'm starting to tread in those little streams. Put my toes in because
I appreciate. I think all of you do a nice job of that, even when we're having it in you do just take the time to sort of call that out, right? It kind of, just allows for us to have space for that to just think, okay, we're having this discussion, it's all valuable, information. As it then helps, sort of influence what future steps, we take. They're not in a directive way, right? really important, valuable information to have as another piece of the puzzle. Oh, that's so important. I think from after our last governance session, Trustee Wax, you had sent, several links, and you had done a lot of sort of digging into and information, right? About one particular topic, which after our discussions of that, that prompted him to want to be able to send that and share that I was able to share that with the rest of the board, as a big part of our discussion. I think that can be sometimes, that blurred line again, right? If you think you're being that diligent board member, which you are in learning more about something, but if you're the only one bringing that and that hasn't been shared. There's value in that, like everyone having the same.
Terrible habit.
We had discussions, huh? What about numbers 2 and 3? I think we do. We do a really great job on number 3. I think we've had to have some really difficult, decisions made, right? There's been disagreement. We just wanted to be able to move forward with what that decision is. And that's one of the hardest things to do, especially if if you're one trustee and you're amongst the 5 who maybe didn't agree with that decision, or even if there was a nay vote, on a particular topic. How the ability for us as a governance team to still be able to move forward and uphold that decision, right, and move the district forward in the direction based on that. In not being able to do that and not being able to uphold that really is what can sometimes.
And I'll build on what Laura said about the learning, because we're all gonna make mistakes, right? We're all gonna, look at somebody the wrong way, or say something we don't exactly mean, or not read something the right way and deal with it. But it's that learning aspect is what solves that, right? If we're coming into it with I made a mistake, but I don't want any one of you to tell me I made a mistake, then we're not moving forward. And to say the same with our district, right? But the whole point is mistakes are that opportunity for learning, not an opportunity for shaming.
Well, I mean, we're all humans up here. It's not like we're all going to mess up at some point or another. And I was just looking at number 3 and how that doing that well directly affects number 2. So, I think we do what you said. I think we do a good job allowing space for healthy disagreement. And if we're not doing that, then our mission and keeping student outcomes the center, letting those be the center of our decisions, we could easily get off track with that by having personal issue with one another because our ego is hurt in some way. I just think it's all closely related.
I agree with you. I think the focus is kind of what you're talking about. Rather than taking something personally, it's staying focused on students and kind of having that conversation with yourself. And then also as a reminder to the board, when we're having those difficult discussions or those moments that feel pretty tense, it's kind of like that grounding thing. Like, are we still focused on putting students first in this moment? And where is my lens, and then where's the board should we be? And I feel like that's what we're trying to do with our handbook is here's the guidebook for how, when these hard decisions come up, we're still going to be respectful. We're still going to listen with empathy. These are the standards we hold ourselves to, so, but always learning and always mistakes and ongoing.
Well, and the human piece of it too is that it's extremely hard to be a human being without ego ever, at some point say that like, I'm not going to take something. It's
Right.
hard not to. And when you're in that moment, especially when you have passion for what we're all here because we're passionate about what's happening in the district and our students and what the outcome of our students' educational journey is going to look like. And so it's hard to separate that, you know, like the emotional piece of that, but just to be up here, you know. Yes, it's really interesting, the balance.
Let's give ourselves an A+ and be done. I'm joking, but like no, I know that was a joke. Don't worry, John. I didn't mean to raise the hair on the back of your neck. But just to say, I mean, the reason I'm say that is it is one of these things that I will say that, you know, if you've watched board meetings from other districts, we do a good job. And again, I think that is a result of each and every one of us, not president, not clerk, therapist. It's all of us that do the lifting to make that happen.
I mean, I agree, but I am like curious. Like we are pretty mission aligned. I feel like we have a similar worldview about the students and that sort of thing. And so, I mean, I think the test would really come if there are different worldviews, not worldviews, but bigger strategic discussions about how to operate the district on the board. I mean, I don't want to test it right now. I'm just saying, like, that's kind of where it would be a real challenge, I think, or not.
To push back, I'll say a little bit. I mean, I think we have hit not full worldview, but I mean, the SRO topic is a great one. That was an issue where we have clear division on the board. We've come to unity of purpose that we made the decision for this year, and it's something we review as the broader plan for the next. Like, but if it was something where, you know, that would, I think that's very clear that we were not all on the same page to start, but we're all on the energy bus driving through the year, at least towards the next decision point to make it happen, to make the decision happen, not a specific vote. Sorry. But just to say, it would be a lot harder if every issue was that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where it gets difficult, because you have to make sure that you're respecting folks' opinions while still steering the board in a direction, whether it's a direction that everyone can hopefully feel comfortable with, even if not maybe a little bit uncomfortable with.
And I think to like go about, we are like a microcosm of what we want the kids to be, you know, in terms of acting. So hopefully we're modeling that, even though no one's here. You know, they know intrinsically, they know. You know, hopefully the vibes are good, I guess, throughout the district for the most part.
I think us doing this work is kind of steers the bus of what the vibes in the district are. If we're willing to sit down as a board and have healthy, respectful conversations that are difficult with different perspectives and strong viewpoints, and we can do that in a respectful and ultimately like collaborative consensus building way. I mean, that's the goal, right? For like us as a microcosm, but so much more broadly is to be able to have respectful conversations and understand where someone else is coming from here. And then also as it trickles down to our kids every single day. So
this is a real blurring of the line.
Go for it.
But I was never on speech and debate, but being forced to pick a position and then argue it would be like an interesting team building exercise in a way. To try, I guess, to get to, yeah, we should do a field trip to the debate team, you know. Did they have the debate team? Okay, good.
Yes.
I didn't realize that actually.
I think even the middle schools.
I don't know.
Oh, my daughter should go.
But that was my entire law school experience, was pretty much like debate team, pick an issue and then try to understand everyone else's perspective other than the one that you either personally align with or your client aligns with, to be able to kind of like gain a broader understanding.
That's a good mental exercise.
Or
Because, well, that's the goal.
Well, but we should come to compromise.
Yeah, but the exercise is looking at things through a different lens, like.
Or arguing for something. Okay, that's a trial lawyer, not a mediation lawyer. But even.
I was never in mediation. Yeah. So, yeah.
But even if you're tasked with arguing something that you don't personally believe, then you're still forced to.
Yeah.
Things from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, you're right. It's, you're bringing up like having a rehearsal, like of a difficult subject where.
Yeah.
Because we don't really, in the moment,
Right. Don't know.
you're kind of stuck because especially if you're emotional about something, you're not necessarily following a playbook
Yeah.
of, how to be respectful at the moment, so, yeah.
You don't read the board norms when you're in a fight with your spouse?
No.
That would be a good exercise. I mean, it kind of is like the
Agree to disagree.
I love a good system.
Chain of command, maybe.
Here are our family norms, which is kind of what we established. Like, here are what the guidelines are and the norms for behavior on a. Well, I mean, this is kind of the idea, yeah.
Space for complaint and inquiry report.
One more tangent. Did, I know this is recorded, but did anyone watch the rehearsal? Incredibly bizarre. This guy tries to rehearse his life. And it just goes in a lot of amazing, bizarre. Yeah, it's a comedy. I mean, he's a comedian, but yeah. Mind blowing. Yeah.
Should that be our homework?
Homework.
I mean, no.
Okay. October 23rd.
Yeah, Lou and
I
Eric.
actually have to miss that meeting.
Oh,
Oh, okay. I'm going to Visalia. For an economic development thing that I'm gonna try and wear this badge at.
We have a calendar, future calendar right now. So should we move on to the guidelines?
Page 21 of your the book itself, and just I'm sure you obviously all read them as well, but it's the guidelines for serving on the board, and there's 5 of them, and this is I was reading. It just it's so much in there, right? It's an uninspiring view to think about our norms. I think reserving judgment, right? And not making assumptions, right? Not holding on to complete views of others. Listening empathetically. Staying focused on content, not behavior or style, always being true to the norms of the board and not taking differences personally. I think like the summary of everything we just had a discussion about that. That's a sort of like a 1 page that just really stood out to me.
It's 1 1/4 page.
Number 6.
Continue
Yeah.
on. Oh, it's 6. I didn't hear you right. If all else fails after many attempts to accommodate the views or behavior that are being important or move forward, right? Responsibilities. Or
This is another stop the bus thing, but this is the stay focused on content, not behavior or style. I agree, but then later they have this horrific pie chart where like only where like people only pay attention to 7% of your words. Yeah.
Language and
And I always see myself on the video like oh geez, no, but well, I mean, just in the screen,
suddenly do this dance.
sort of, but I could like never, but that's all to say, everything's hard. Page 58 is where.
Oh, yeah.
I pulled out the quote in one of our slides coming up on the page before that, where it says one of the most important and often least appreciated traits of highly effective trustees, management of their public behavior. Speak to body language, right, and how we are.
Yes.
We are an official, right?
Well, just on number 6 there on page 22. When all else fails, okay, you have to go forward. Okay, this falls on the president. And I just remember before I was on the board, the first time I was going to board meetings, and there was one board member who was really not in sync with the other 4 and just always causing, always coming up with something that the other 4 not okay with, not going to go there, but continually, but he was allowed, of course, to voice his opinion.
Were they president?
Oh, when he was president, that's when we went through a recall.
Oh, okay.
Because it was so bad. But at the time that I was watching, he wasn't president, and there was a woman that was president, and she handled him so well because he brought up the issue was cutting the budget, and he just wanted to cut out football. And of course, he was on the wrong side of that. Totally. Okay. But he would keep bringing it up. So finally, she says to him, what's his name? Something like Dave. She goes, "You don't have the votes, so we're not bringing that up again." And I just thought, oh, it was so good. Like, she was firm, and just, but sometimes, like a board president may have to say that, like, and this is what it's talking about here. If all else fails, you're trying to work with with the other person, you're trying to understand where they're coming from, but you also have to run a meeting, and the practicality of something like you don't have the votes, so I always just remember that. Was a good example. The other thing on this particular chapter, I kept underlining because they kept repeating it, was moral imperative everywhere. And I go, what do they mean by moral imperative? Like it was everywhere, and it wasn't until page 25 that they defined it. It says a shared moral imperative that is common ground that underlies all their work, a moral purpose, a shared relentless commitment to the learning and well-being of all students, no exception, drives the work of the board and its members, individual and collective action. So that was kind of interesting. I don't remember ever discussing that as a board, but or characterizing it in that way. But in this particular chapter, I mean, I can't tell you how many times they use the term moral imperative.
It's the chapter name.
Yeah.
The moral imperative in the governance core.
I mean, is that
Yeah,
not our,
it
again, our
is.
board norms though too, right? That is our moral imperative. It's in many ways.
Yeah,
it is.
but I don't remember seeing that
No, I mean, I agree. It's
in any other, do you? I mean, you didn't mention it.
No,
It's not up there.
Right, good.
I mean, it's not a term that I think governance teams use. So I'm just interesting that they decided that that was something that described our behaviors. It's
I think it does speak to like keeping the student outcomes and mission alignment though.
Mhm.
Exactly.
The way that they've defined moral imperative.
Anything else on chapter 1? We can move on. Okay, so the overview for chapter 2, this really talks about obviously the infrastructure, right, of effective. We talk about infrastructure, which came up a lot in chapter 7 and 8 as well, and really in the introduction to, the authors are referring to norms, handbooks, policies, evaluation processes. The focus here is looking towards the creation of consistency, clarity, and accountability. That rate. The focus being on providing stability through leadership or board changes. And I think that's the piece that starts me. I think everything you're looking at, the norms and both we're creating your systems and guidelines, right? So that even when there is a change in, members who serve on the board, one or three, right? That there's still sort of the sense these are the practices, these are the systems that we have in place, right? That shouldn't change, right? Just because you've got, new people coming onto the board. I think that's important because with many, boards, and districts across, the state, you see that occurring, right? Where there can be just sort of shift in practices and approaches, and suddenly you've got the whole culture and nature of the district. And I think, there's a portion of that that's, there's a personal aspect to it that speaks to a little, I think, where you were going with it, Trustee Wax, is, haven't tested it. If you were to have, 2 people come on something that's totally different, viewpoints, right? Coming in with wanting to move things in a different direction. If you have those systems in place, have your structure and your guidelines on what you've all agreed to, right? That should help as you navigate those significant changes. That's why things like your handbook, your norms. We spend a lot of time on it, making sure everyone is in the thing. That speaks to why it's so important. Those are elements that we'll make adjustments to them over the years, soundings of the core principles of what they represent. It's good practice as well, right?
Right. I mean, just in this hypothetical, just in this hypothetical, I think it would still be a test because not presumably, but hypothetically, these 2 new board members might completely oppose the norms. So they wouldn't necessarily abide by them because they didn't vote on them. So their whole MO would be to change the norms, So I think as good as your handbooks and policies and norms might be, and however comfortable the current board might be with them, it's still, I mean, I guess that's the outcome of elections. Things change, so I don't know.
Well, one thought on that, this is not coming from a specific political bent, but part of the reason for government bureaucracy is to resist rapid change.
Right.
I mean, it's really frustrating when you're living it, but again, it's so that if someone wants to tear down the norms, they're not just doing one thing, right? They have to rewrite the handbook, they have to rewrite the norms, they have to do self-evaluation. So the more of those systems we put in place can protect against that, so that there's not just a sudden shift.
Yeah.
But I mean, I agree. It's still with the right, if 4 out of 5 of us get replaced, the norms could be something brand new the next day if people want it. Or even 3.
Majority. But I think even in that scenario, the idea of the handbook and the norms are that they're living documents. So they may work for us, but they may be a totally different conversation with different values and different outcomes when board membership changes, but that's kind of the purpose, is the ongoing conversation. Like for this board, we're mission aligned, we can focus on students and the work. For some boards, like even deciding that we're putting students first, and what that very broadly looks like is the dysfunction. So you can't get below the level of these high, it ends up being political and it shouldn't, but just these contentious issues. So you can't get any outcomes for students. You can't focus on learning. You're stuck fighting with each other instead of focusing on students. So for the governance thing, even when if there is a board that's divided or isn't aligned, just having that conversation in an open and transparent and public meeting. And like what Elliot said, there's value
Right.
in that. Yeah.
Out of the infrastructure point, do you all think that there's a particular one that could be strengthened
Mm.
in our district?
I mean, I'll point to the last one is because that's one that has not been done as regularly, whether it's of staff, whether it's of the board, is like if you have clear evaluation processes, especially if that's in a public and transparent way, it makes it a lot harder. You know you're being evaluated and you're going to be tested on something. It's hard. It doesn't just completely discourage you, but it makes it harder to. It's not the only one, but that's the one I would say we have the most work to do.
And a lot of, I think that's a system and a lot of what, since Elliot and Laura and I came on the board, we've been working on is systems and the creations of systems within HR, within sites, like all across the district and interconnected so that there can be more trust and transparency because we're all following this and that's clearly defined and we're going to be accountable to ourselves and we'll be accountable to the public and the students we serve as well. But that's a work in progress. I feel like the systems that were, and it's, ongoing, but Dr. Adamson has really created a lot of consistency and systems in her short time with us. So it's been really good.
I think it's just a hard thing to do, no matter what.
Yeah, across the board.
Organization.
Yeah.
I mean, like, even the, not board specific, but the evaluation of like how the state tests about what our district is
Sure.
are so hard to wade through,
Mhm.
I wish there was a more succinct version that could be received, more times through a year or something, it's just hard to get the data.
And I mean, that's another area. I mean, it's not on here right now, but that I mean, I guess it is under the last one. It's transparency. And so that's the part of it is I think we've again made a lot of growth on transparency, but the part of transparency that's I think is most difficult in some ways is the accessibility. Not that it's just available, but the what does it mean? And again, this is where that email of the board updates is a great example, just where it's like you don't have to watch 3.5 to maybe 5.5 hours of a board meeting to know what happened, but here's a summary. Helps make that transparency more accessible. And I think that's the kind of stuff that we can also think, continue to think about working on.
True.
Yeah, and it's happening consistently and reliably now, so people can know what's coming and what tools they can utilize if they want to stay informed or know more. And also we have Dr. Adamson who's accessible and available to have conversations. And I feel like that really helps to build trust within the community and also enhance transparencies, the willingness, And I think that's true for our board too. We're willing to have the hard conversations. Dr. Adamson's typing away over there.
Such good things. I'm like, wow. I think you right. No, God, what do you mean? I think that I referred to it earlier, but I've pulled that quote out on page 44. The board's role is in the helicopter or balcony with enough touchdowns, I love that, to know the lay of the land. That's where I sort of tied it back into the whole governance versus sort of management, component. There's the one story that they reference that kind of falls on that same page about an individual who's out there looking and in fire, right, that's coming down on top of the hill, and the first immediate reaction was how do I save my house, right, versus when she then switched on the television was able to see the news coverage, and it really was from the perspective of a helicopter, and it was a whole different approach. They were talking about how the approach is what land can we burn surrounding the fire to sort of kind of die out, and there was a calming component of it, right, but made that relation to see sometimes we will come at a particular issue with really how does this impact me or the situation that I'm in with those around me and who I'm hearing from, versus being able to stand back and away from the problem and really be able to allow. I think that's the role that you all are constantly having to balance. When we talked about earlier about blue lines, that's where the messiness comes in. trust as well, and trust in, the staff, right? The superintendent to be able to work through those things, given the input that you're able to provide. But, I think that's definitely.
My quick stop will just be like, when I first read this, I thought touchdowns was like football touchdowns. I'm not getting that analogy. Yeah, not like a helicopter touchdown. I'm like, oh, we've gone through a football
Touchdown.
Yeah.
But with that sort of the overview, and the guiding questions are on the next slide that we'll kind of just use. Three that are there for us to think through. Which governance tools, so thinking of handbook, norms, policies, do you think work well with our governance team, and which do you think is strong use? How do we ensure our infrastructure stays alive and not static? I think one reference in the chapter there, they talked a lot about, making sure that your handbook is not something that there's something that's collected dust on the shelf, right? How do we make sure it's meaningful and we bring it to life each time? And then what additional structures or tools could strengthen trust, transparency, and accountability? The example there, it came to mind of a former superintendent I used to work for my former district would always say, you talk about your cabinet, right? Cabinet isn't a meeting or a team. It's, when you have norms that, talk about who you are, as a cabinet, you are those norms. That's not norms that we just follow when we're here meeting together. We're taking those norms out and who we are, how we carry ourselves and what we represent. That's something that really is, very powerful, memorable to me. Evaluations, probably, right? A self-evaluation.
We answered that one a little bit.
But I do think we've done well with our policies and the policy committee and the ongoing review and revision and making sure we're using those tools in their best form because they're up to date and we're compliant with them. As well as the handbook we've developed this year. That's a strength.
Once again, thankful for the policies people. So
Sounds like you're volunteering to serve next year. Oh. It's like, I have enough committees.
Yeah.
Voluntold.
Exactly.
I will, going back to this, I know this isn't necessarily about governance, but everything is related. I feel like this helicopter fire metaphor also reminds me of the UK thing, where there are some families directly affected by it, but not seeing the bigger picture. But if your house does burn, you still want solutions and help. And I think to the best of our district's ability, we did kind of help the people who were most impacted, I guess. So that's just to say, if your house burned, it still sucks. So, you still will need resources and help and everything. And even though there is a larger picture.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a really important point, but that is another one of those which was hard for us to deal with at the time, because it is every decision we make, right, with that is going to then affect the next budgetary decision we make and then affect the next. And so it's how do we, make that decision looking forward? If this is the priority among, above some of the other priorities we made in the past, then we take that on financially. But I mean, like you're saying, it's that high level of We're not just looking at this one item and saying, yes, we're saying, how does this fit within that big picture? Yeah. And that's really good.
Yeah, like it says, if you're saying yes to something in the budget, you're saying no to at least something else.
I can go to the, that was
It was in the book.
page 47. Number 5.
So just that perspective and reminder that we're looking at one issue, but we're looking at the issue in such a broader context of all the things we have to still be considering and, you know. I think for number 2, the way we ensure our infrastructure stays alive and not static is continuing to have these governance conversations as a board. Ongoing, because it's in our policy to evaluate ourselves and also because I personally think this is essential for us to be able to govern effectively, is to be able to sit in a room and have conversations about how we do it. I think good governance is super underrated. Yeah. Sorry, guys, I like governance.
I wrote the exact same thing down. I mean, I think that is the important part, because again, we can't deal with these things if we're putting the students first. And I mean, what I mean by that is at regular board meetings, we need to make sure we're advancing, and so this is the time for us to be able to.
Yeah, we can focus on like what's going on amongst us during these meetings, and we can focus on students. More specifically during our regular board meetings, stick it in the parking lot and move forward and stay on track.
I had one for the third item. That's okay. And I think this has come up before, and we may have done something about this, but the idea of the anonymous district idea box, like an opportunity for staff to weigh in on board decisions approaches. And, maybe it would be something that would come to you, Linda, and then you could use your buddies, ChatGPT and Gemini to summarize for us, but so that it would help anonymize it more, but just as a way to make sure we're getting that feedback, on some of these things. It would help us with the self-evaluation as well. They often can carry that potential for anonymity brings, potential for people to say things without, but again, I trust our staff would not do that.
How do you do it though? Because anything that's electronic would have some kind of a trail. It could just be it would have to literally be a piece of paper in a box.
And I would almost say we could target it to October 23rd or whatever the new date is for our, when we're doing our self-evaluation, because those kind of things is what would be useful for us to know, when were you happy with the board decision? When were you disappointed with it? When do you thought the president droned on too long? Things like that.
Or how things could be conducted better.
But are you asking for outside input? Outside of the board?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking for the self, I'm saying I would start maybe with, I would make it to parents too, but I would maybe put them in separate buckets. So targeting some district and then maybe targeting the public as well. To use, it's not really a 360, but to use in our self-evaluation process.
I think it's a great idea because I think that we can have our own perspective of how we're doing, but we could also be completely out of touch with reality because we may not be truly reflective of what we're doing. Yeah, the district's great, but it is good to get feedback. It's a 360 kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, what better feedback than the people that are living it? I can make a comment, but be totally inappropriate. It involves downhill. We will say that, and the directional flow of things. And so it's good to be able to hear back. If we're being on, and honest feedback is important because we can stroke our hair all we want and say, I think we're doing a good job, and it could be superficial, or we could find out truly what staff thinks, how parents feel. A lot of people don't have time to show up to a board meeting. A lot of people are kind of maxed out, but if they have an opportunity to be able to give input and be heard, I think that that's powerful and effective and could help us govern better. And more.
Well, I
wholly.
see that as two different pots, because when you're talking about a board self-evaluation, at least the way it's written in our policy, is it's about how we evaluate what we are doing amongst ourselves. And then if you want to look at how you're perceived by others, that's fine. But to me, that's kind of a different evaluation.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not seeking it out as like this is going to determine the direction we might shift, but it would help. What I was thinking is it would help me with my my self-evaluation, because I do think that I will have blind spots as to what I think I've done well and some things I might have done bad. So it's not asking others to evaluate us, but it's asking them to give us those pieces that we can use to help evaluate ourselves, if that makes sense. Maybe that's blurring lines or splitting hairs, but
No, I just see it as kind of a side by side instead of integrated in a way. It can give some information for sure. And it may be something that you want to incorporate, or we all want to incorporate. But I don't see how it meshes with an internal document that we will use to evaluate ourselves. It could be something that we then go to. We do our evaluation, and then we do a public perception evaluation. But and then we, incorporate the results of that, and what do we want to do with that? Or
I guess the key difference is I don't want the public or the staff to evaluate us, but it's more of the tip box. Because I guess the public's going to evaluate us at the voting box down the road anyway. So I think that is always part of it, and through letters and comments. But I guess it's more like giving us that, like the idea of it. I don't know if you're familiar with, and again, sorry if I'm explaining it unnecessarily, but like the idea of the 360, right, is like when you're doing a self-evaluation, you can ask people to give in. Like I've done this for employees that I collaborate with and such, is you're giving that information not because you're evaluating them and saying they're doing a bad job, but you're giving that information that they can then use in their self-evaluation. So it's a little bit, like I said, I know I'm splitting hairs a bit, but I'm not sold on it. I think we could do it as a separate process as well. I just think there could be some opportunity for me personally. There could be some opportunity to get a better reading and temperature of how we're doing.
I'm just thinking along those lines. I'm thinking that if we're doing a self-evaluation, which is self-evaluation, but we're considering input from other people, but how much are we considering it? And how much is it? I think it gets confusing and kind of messy for me. So I'm open to it, but definitely like two buckets. Like self-evaluation is us using whatever tool. And then if we want to gather feedback in that format, I'm open to it. I just want to make sure the lines aren't blurred for ourselves and for the public. Like we're taking this feedback into consideration, kind of, because we're evaluating ourselves, but we can only consider it so much. And then, people want to be heard. So if they don't know how their feedback is reflected in what we do or how we process and use it, I don't know, it could be sticky.
I wonder too, I agree. I see what you guys are both saying too. And I think it would be effective to get the feedback, but you're right. If someone's giving their feedback and the messages, we're kind of going to pay attention to that. Or maybe we decided that we won't. I wonder how it would look as far as maybe it could be brought back to board governance just not related to self-evaluation.
Yeah.
So we can sit and have a conversation about what the results of that look like to us as a governance team, you
That
know?
feels appropriate.
I'm on the bus now.
Yeah.
Maybe in the back seat, but
Don't pull the handle, Mike.
I'm not, just to say that I also would like, the opportunity for others to kind of give their feedback without an anonymous way to give feedback without like without the viewpoint from me that it would be like how they perceive me. Like if my neighbor didn't want to comment, didn't want to email or stand up here and give a comment about something I had done, but they felt strongly. I mean, I guess I wouldn't have to take it into consideration, but it would still be nice to know, I guess, that they felt this particular way. I don't know. I like just, I mean, who knows how many people would submit feedback, but providing the opportunity, I think would be nice. I think it strengthens transparency and accountability and even trust. I'll go all three. That's right.
Definitely think transparency. And even if it's transparency, like almost public transparency. Do you know what I mean? Like given the opportunity to voice how they feel, even though they may not be comfortable in a microphone doing it.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think by them submitting feedback, it means that we will definitely consider it or definitely go with their ideas. It's just another opportunity to be heard. In my opinion.
I envision an email the board wants to hear.
And into the notes, and I think that's it. Self-evaluation piece of it, there may be that separate bucket is, you know what I'm hearing. Some way or form, right? All right, anything else on those questions?
I think for number 3, structures or tools are that strengthen trust, transparency, and accountability is the way in which we communicate to the public and to the staff what we're doing. And I mean more so like that the information is packaged in a way that people will open it, read it, and be able to digest it given all of the other things they have going on in their life. And I realize that is like a huge challenge. Like, you know, we can write 3 pages, but summarizing it in a paragraph is sometimes a lot harder to do, but it's sometimes is more effective in getting the information to people so they have it and they know that we're taking steps towards transparency and accountability. So I think that's kind of like a goal for me is like communication to be, I don't want to say streamlined, but I don't know, everything we watch these days is in like 30-second segments or 2-minute chunks. So just something that is more like just digestible, accessible, understandable. I don't know the correct terminology, but yeah, easier to access. I don't know.
Yeah, like even I don't know if it's a limitation of the software, but like that you have to click through for like the board notes. Like if it was just contained in the email, formatted nicely with like 5 bullet points or whatever, I think that would be helpful for just digestibility and, you know, adding another click for people to get through seems like a small impediment, but like a small user interface thing that could be. Or like the
Highlights.
the summary, the highlights, you know. Yeah, I don't know if that text could be just within the straight up email or if there's only like a certain context window that whatever software you use. That's just
reducing the clicks as much as possible, right?
Reduce the clicks.
think you said design, right? That's exactly where I was going. I mean, you know, that whole the way it's set
Yeah.
up and it looks polished and you know, just right, want of a better word. But I see where you're going with that. Right? Yeah. I mean, yeah, we're living in a time where you're right. I mean, people are just so busy, and if it means that someone, you know, isn't going to go ahead and take that extra step to it and just ignore the email versus if it's there, right?
Okay, I just had a question. Do we track how many people read, open, click what gets sent from the district? Like, do we have numbers on how many people read your newsletter? Or data on any things like that?
I think, and I'm looking over at Director Binder, but correct me if I'm wrong, that because they're Google Docs, right? I mean, you're able to go in and sort of see, I don't know if it's exactly, but I think you can, right? When you're looking at trends and the historical, you know, number of usage.
You can bring up
right?
division histories on Google Docs, that's correct.
Right.
So just so, because does that mean that Linda could send out a monthly newsletter and then like in a week, she could go look and it'd say 400 people clicked on it or something?
Okay, so that's a different measure, yeah, so that would be more like looking at the analytics of access.
Yeah.
versus the historical editing. So I thought, Linda, you were referring to maybe.
Yeah, just how many people are reading that.
Right.
Would be the-
So, yeah, if we're sending it out and it's hosted on the website, we can collect that information as far as how many people are hitting that link.
Okay,
A little harder to do if it's embedded as an email.
okay.
You know, we could see who's opened the email, but
Yeah.
we can't see how many people have actually clicked on the link.
Yeah.
So we do have that data as far as how many people actually receive, open, and maybe click somewhere in the email. Yeah.
Okay. I think that would be helpful data because those are the kind of the different steps I'm thinking is like we're sending out information. It's valuable information. We want people to read it, but it's 2 clicks away or the text wasn't right there when I opened the email and that could be the end of the exercise for people. So then I don't know. I want what we're sending to reach more people.
Yeah, and to go back to the blurred lines, like, I don't think we should be involved in that.
Totally.
But I think it's like a tool for the district. to kind of
Exactly.
Pay attention to
Yeah, trends.
email marketing
Mhm.
newsletters.
Mhm.
Whatever.
And even just like goals in terms of us and communication strategies and strengthening those practices is, do we want to, you know, say this is where we're at right here and we're going to work towards changing the numbers or increasing or decreasing over time? Like just something to consider.
And also like, if you make I mean, the good thing is the updates are pretty frequent. So like making small changes, you know, it's sort of like an A/B test or not an A/B test, but you can make little changes and then see.
I don't know why the word like clickbait popped into my head, like a puppy or.
Yes, newsletters with more puppy.
Just this one weird trick. You can understand the district better.
Exactly.
Oh my God. Oh,
No, don't do that.
Man, it's so frustrating.
It's a crypto newsletter. We'll buy ads on Clash of Clans or some other game. For everyone.
Breaker Bob.
Else on that one.
But I will kudos Mike for bringing it back to the like how versus why too. Like we're not gonna tell you how to do it.
No.
but, yeah, this is what we want to see.
Right,
So,
that's good. Uh-huh.
good circle back.
Okay, well, you know, closing reflection, and I think, you know, this is what I've poured on, but I'd love to hear you. Next slide, Director Binder. You know, there's key takeaways. Highlighted the fact, you know, governance mindset is that focus on mission, unity, student outcomes, right? That's featured a lot in our discussion. Infrastructure, systems and tools that bring consistent trust, and then that focus on, you know, requiring ongoing use, reflection.
I had a word to the last one. I would say ongoing use, reflection, commitment, and improvement.
Think.
Not just making them the same as you do
Making it on here, though it's not going to show up on there.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I think too, feedback. Because shouldn't we be receiving feedback from every level? You know, staff, students, public.
You reminded me of another one that I've, and I know this is something we talked about a little bit in our one-on-ones, Linda, but like and it's a difficult position you're in to give that feedback. But I would challenge you a little bit also to do that, is and then not just where we're going out of the blurred lines, but like, are there things that you see? You have much more experience in education than my 2.5 years on the board. So it'd be good to get that feedback from you as well. You can do it anonymously, or you can do it
Anonymously.
not in the box. It'll be obvious with your South African handwriting, right?
And it's 2 years and 10 months if you were counting.
There we go. Both require ongoing use, reflection, commitment, feedback, and improvement. So the prompt that I will end, this section with is on the next slide. One action that you think we forward in the next 3 months to strengthen either our mindset or our.
Well, there's a lot of infrastructure. I think I'd like to see us do a little better on our closed session structure.
Yeah.
I just feel that we can be mindful of how long discussions are going to take, that we don't rush people, and that board members have the ability to really talk about things, because they just, this is the only chance you really do get to be very frank and trusted, and just to be worried about like the timing of it. It puts pressure on people in a way. So that's one thing that I feel like we can do better.
Do you think it's add more time? Do you think it's the way topics are brought forward?
Like sometimes it's a pretty
Yeah.
agenda in the closed session for, yeah, and it's understandably you're like we have 2 minutes, and it's like the echo that, so it feels a little frenzied.
I think it also matters not just the number of items, because we could just have 2, but it's the weight of the items that are in front of us. And those weighty things take longer. I think sometimes you could look at what is happening in closed session. There could be 6 things, but they're all pretty snip, snap, easy. And so maybe planning the time based off of anticipating sort of that there's going to be discussion happening around it. I also would say that it's better to come back late than, we really can't come back early, because if someone, if we said we're coming back at 6:30 and someone logs in at 6:30 and we've come back at 6:15, now there's 15 minutes that the public hasn't gotten access to the board meeting. So I guess I'm late all the time anyway, so being late really doesn't bother me a bit. But I do think like we could structurally plan well, not we, but there could be more like structure in the planning of the time allotted in closed session based off of like weight of topic.
If it's written in the agenda that, you know, the open session will be at 6:30, is that like binding?
It's a practice we've been told by somebody in the public at past board members.
It's in our
It's really
policy.
important and is, yeah.
It's our policy.
We've been called out when we've been late.
That's exactly what I was saying.
Called us out on that, I wonder.
But
We can revisit it every December though, when we
I
do our
only did
planning.
it because
I know.
Jesse Bray was right here
Yeah.
telling me to do it.
No, but
And this board room is named after.
yes, exactly. I will, no, I mean, I honestly, I think
A stickler.
You were right, yeah, I
She was a
mean.
stickler for that.
it's an important point.
You gotta start on
Start
time.
on
You
time.
say you're starting at 7, you gotta start at 7.
One thing I would say is I think some of the systems we've done for open session, we can take to closed. And so maybe some of it is trying to limit presentations and not that you know, or we've talked about this before, but emailing when possible that with confidentiality so that we can digest the heavy
We
stuff.
talk about tonight, without obviously keeping on, but there was information shared. I
Yeah.
mean, with that, and I didn't share it in advance because the nature of,
Sure.
I could have, right, but I felt it was better provided. Yes.
I personally would have appreciated the email only because it's the discussion part. It's so hard that we have limited time for discussion. And so if we get that email, it allows us to be hopefully on the same page as long as everyone reads it. And then we can come in for that, those discussions and hopefully, if there's need, like sometimes there'll be information, like something might come up that happened 10 years ago that someone might not know about. And that gives the opportunity for that person to then come to you and say, hey, I saw this one thing. Can you give me more info? But I recognize puts more work on your shoulders and the timing, but
But I mean, I had my talking points that I would have just shared with all of you in advance, right? I mean, in this particular stuff.
Well, also like within the discussion, like Beth, you were talking, and as you're talking, my brain is working, and you'll say something and then I will think of a question or think of something that I would like to say because what you're saying resonates with me and it makes the conversation starts to expand based off of the perspectives of everyone that's sitting in that room. And emailing in advance, I'm all for that. But it's the discussion that starts to take time. And so when things are heavy, or you can feel it even probably when you're typing it up, that that there's going to be it's going to take time because maybe those are the times that we allow an hour. And if we're done early, then we can all sit around and eat candy quietly or something, or whatever it is, so that Jesse Bray would be okay.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with Elliot or Dr. Hazen, President Hazen,
Elliot,
whatever.
President Elliott.
Yeah, President Dr. Hazen. I mean, if the points had been emailed, that when the conversation would have still happened, and then we would have had more time for conversation. So, and I know, or I don't know, I assume you feel some sort of way about emailing closed session things, but we have had other confidential emails. So, I mean, if you're going to say it anyways, I personally, again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not advising, but I don't see the issue with sending it in advance, under the caveat of it being confidential, like every other confidential thing that you've said.
In one, again, I don't know, again, this is one of those, the hows that I put back. I mean, if maybe it's a Google Doc that's view only, so it's not emailed, right? You say, here's the information for us to read it. I mean, there might be ways to, if there's concerns with it being via email, but I do think that, and it's the same, it's exactly what we came back to, right? That we wanted each of us for the open session to have a certain amount of time, not that we have to end it, for a report, or we're not going to cut people off, but by shortening the presentation, since 7% of what is words is actually interpreted, by shortening that, it allows more time for the discussion and the moving of are hopefully are. So that would be my suggestion that I was thinking at the time, actually, like this parallels some of our open session discussions.
Very clearly marked, like confidential attorney-client privilege, and like marked on the document as well, maybe a stamp or something, so that every page is clearly marked. That way, if for some reason confidential information ends up where it shouldn't, we can trace it. Yeah. That's my lawyer contribution. Thank you.
And then I'll also say the box would help my mindset at least. The suggestion box, going back to one action.
I mean, I hate cutting off discussion. I'll be honest. That's one of my hardest things I have issues with. But it's the one I also keep myself up with at the end of a meeting when I'm like, wow, we spent 2 hours on one item that had nothing to do with students, or that at least wasn't student centric. And that's when I'm like, why did we do that? So that's where I think, again, as a group, it's the president's job to keep the meeting flowing, but also as a group, think about when we're making these comments, like how are they? Is this directly with the students? Do we need all of the context, or do we need the summary context with some of it available?
Yeah, you made a suggestion at the end of the meeting just about it would have been good to flip the order. Because if one of the items is going to be short, put that one first, and then you have your time to fully discuss the other one. I mean, if you know that. And also I'm just going to piggyback on what you said there. Because I really do believe that pretty much anything we discuss in board meetings, whether it's closed session or in the board meeting, is related to students. I don't ever feel that if we're on a particular item that is a little farther away from students, that it's still not our business. I am not feeling that kind of concern that we're spending way too much time on this particular item when it's not as directly related to students as it could be. So I would just wish that you wouldn't have to worry about that.
I'll give a hypothetical because I don't think there's one we've had, but let's say on consent, there's a purchasing of a new water bottle facility here, and we spend 2.5 hours on it. That's the kind of thing. Yes, that is potentially, if Linda's well hydrated, she's going to be nicer to the students, but I would say, do we want to spend 2 hours on that and then 15 minutes on the curriculum versus 15 minutes on that and 2 hours on the curriculum, as an example. So I agree that maybe everything's related to students, but the degree of which it's removed to me shouldn't equate 1-to-1 to the amount of time we spend on it, but there should be some consideration of that, if that makes sense.
I can agree with that. Definitely. That's a good example. And that's your job as a president. You would make that call and tell us all, okay, we're spending, it's been 15 minutes that we've been discussing this, and we have an agenda of slightly more important items. So can we wrap it up? However you say.
I know you remember I did that at a recent meeting.
You do a really good job of that. You really do. And I hope that you don't go home and beat yourself up about it. Because you really do a fantastic job of you have to move me along sometimes, and you do a really good job of it. You're not disrespectful. You're not rude about it. You just get the job done. So
as long as you guys don't take it personally, I'm happy to keep doing it and doing it maybe a little
she
more.
might be taking it personally, because apparently when you get dehydrated.
Have some more water.
For what it's worth, I also thought both things in tonight's closed session could have been emailed, especially since there wasn't that much discussion, but it's the presentation still took time. So yeah, I don't know. I'm always for emails.
Okay, no, that's really helpful. Else, I'm gonna add, scheduling and self-evaluation for our governance team.
What about a group watch party of the rehearsal? Maybe we can put in pajamas and popcorn.
We have to do it in here.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But it would be, you don't know how meta that would be with this particular show.
Inception.
Yeah.
Put that in the plan.
Here we go, parking lot indeed. All right, well, that brings us to the end of our discussion on the governance core 2.0. Wow. Are you finding it valuable and
I really like it. It's better than 1.0. It's a lot better than
right?
1.0. I mean, seriously. Actually, it's not like
Great.
twice as good, maybe 2.0 or 1.0. But no, I mean, if you remember back to the original one, I just feel like this is a little more applicable, like there's direct lessons out of it.
Well, so if we're good for our next session, whenever that's going to be, but how about chapters 3 and 4? Really cool about chapter 3 as they really get into the whole relationship, superintendent. Highlight some good examples of just PGUSD. It's not in. We need to get it in there. 3.0, right? That's our goal. All right. So I think really our next item was just to delve into a little bit of I'll set them up. If we're doing good about that, do we need to take a little break or you want to just bio break? Okay. 5 minutes, should we say? Yep.
Make it 3 minutes so we're back.
Yes, let me put it now. We'll never see it again.
Oh, everybody remember to sign Sarah's.
Yes, did that. I get paid next year, 51, yeah. No, that was good.
Always. Yeah. I mean, it's like a kind of meeting, it's part of it.
It's not really, I'm not really, pointing to.
But in a good way, in a growth, because I want to do better, not because I feel that you're coming after me, but like, yeah, it's like, I care a lot about this.
Yeah. No, what I think is, it's been handed down, so to speak. Thank you. So, the readers came on, you have a style that you were involved with.
and to bring, just one example of something you think you would want to point out to. I know in the past, we had kind of looked at it along the lines of, something that you think we either have, well, that we could improve on, right? And maybe, giving an example of what we all have identified, at least as one story that we going forward. We put it in pairs last time and then sort of did a share out. I'm proposing, just keep it together.
I think this was a good, do you mind mixing it up on the fly? You guys up for that? Because I want to get people's feedback and yeah, just to try different.
Okay, yep. Well, we'd like to begin then.
Okay, I'll go first. I kept it simple and went with terrible habit number 1.
Cute. These are good.
Oh man, we would have been great in school together. So Elliot and I will co-share out our favorite one. No.
What's the title of that one? It is
Humiliate a district employee in public.
Together.
I know, and that's kind of the feeling I had when I was reading through it of what happened in all the scenarios.
hard one. No.
So what happens is that there's a presentation, a report made at the board meeting that's filled with typos and errors and things that weren't sentences at all. So this board member is left with the choice of what to do or how to handle that. She decides to say, did anyone bother to actually proofread this document? It's full of typos and grammatical errors. It reflects very poorly on our district. If a student handed in a report like this, the grade would be an F. So the challenge is how to handle that differently. Options were you could have dropped the issue because it'll end up being more trouble than it's worth. You could have contacted the staff member directly to tell her to correct the errors you found. You could have contacted the superintendent with your complaints. You could have contacted your fellow board members with your complaints. You could develop a review procedure for releasing district reports so something like this does not happen in the future. And the last option, no, by gosh, you were right in the first place and should have the courage to stick to your convictions. Debbie and Linda deserve to be called out for that unprofessional report. So I think the right answer is like always following our systems. So our point of contact is Linda. So if we have an issue with something that staff does, going to Linda or Dr. Adamson, sorry.
This is
first
definitely
name.
our first name.
That's
basis.
a rule.
Okay. There's also a Linda in the hypothetical, so.
That's right.
No, I'm just. But anyways, the option obviously is to contact our superintendent with our complaints, but something else that stood out to me was my brain immediately is like, we need a system, right? And so I was like, oh, we developed a review procedure, which is true, but the you developing it is not the board member. It's going to you and letting you know what the issue is, and staff develops the system so that this can be prevented in the future. So.
And guess what? I wrote down systems number 1 also. And I brought it back to our district and just thinking about how, again, we have the trustee one-on-ones and questions before the board meeting is, I would say that I think as a large rule, that is what this should come up every single time if we can. And it does. I remember reading some of these and I'm like, wow, one of the board members found 5 typos and it came up in there, which again, fixes it, even if it's not fixed in the final packet at times. That's the right space because it is,
Yeah.
and it's also, a lot of this too is just tone too, like, right. Like it's okay to be like, oh, did you mean, $50 or $500 million rather than saying like, exactly accusatory or like someone feels stupid or like, yeah. And I think that's another part of it because sometimes there will be typos that have to be addressed.
It's the how we go about addressing them and talking to each other and being mindful that there's another human being on the other end of this report who's hearing what you're saying and receiving that. Yeah, just we go straight to Linda. That's all. If there's an issue at the high school, we go to Linda. If there's an issue with the board report, we go to Linda. It just, I don't know, that system, I think it takes out some of the confusion and the where should I go or who could help me with this, or you might think you're saving time because you're like, I'm going directly to that staff member to have that one-on-one conversation, which is like, no.
Yep.
And I don't necessarily think this is something that our board struggles with. I just think this is like really important and a really helpful reminder for us just as we're going forward and doing our work.
We have in the past.
Sure.
And I mean, whether it's path breakups or even this board, and I would say
Yeah.
again, part of
Right.
it's that same, like, we're always going to a degree, make those mistakes, but it's again, doing the better, and it's figuring out, can we bring some of that stuff up in the.
Yeah, in a one-on-one, or at least before the meeting in a phone call with Linda, like, hey, I read this report and I could not get past the typos and the errors. Like, how should I want to bring this up? How can I? Like, what, kind of being more tactful about the way we do it, if we can, if we know ahead of time.
Worst case, you pull it, and then worst case.
And then,
like,
yeah, we
that's
can talk
pullable
about
and
it.
stuff like that, yeah. There's solutions for it that, again,
Yeah,
come from the systems.
that are mindful of like the relationships that we all are trying to maintain and create with everyone within the system. So. Yeah, that was mine. Never a district employee in public, but like, yikes, the ultimate bullying. Was that like our role model? We're modeling in all the ways up here, so it's like,
Stands out to me.
Yeah.
And I think, if we are modeling for our students as well, right? So
Mhm.
it's about that whole, going back to that whole thing about our public behavior. How
Right.
we treat each other, the adults in the room, everyone is watching,
Mhm.
right? And we are. We could always just go and start with those best intentions and start with kindness. We can still do the work and get the corrections done, and but it comes back to tone and how we say it, how we ask it, right? It's we're working on trust, right? And it's such a delicate balance there, right? And we know, right, it takes so long to build up that it's crushed and disintegrates in an instant. Things like that can lead to.
Yeah, and then I think also one thing that stands out to me is like, if there is something going on and you're made aware of it from staff, is being able to have conversations so that it doesn't just sit and fester or not get addressed.
Right, exactly. And that ties into a little, I think, that whole purpose of knowing it ahead, whether it's errors or just if there are questions. And, I think that ability for, even if it's the day off, for me to be able to then, there is going to be something cool, just giving that, to the general staff member, even myself.
Mhm.
Okay, this is going to be something that, let's make sure we're prepared. Because there's also nothing worse than, I know we always have that ability to say, you know what, we'll get back to you on that. But I think being prepared and ready, in the moment, there's just nothing worse than feeling that you're not, or that was a gotcha, or, and I don't think anyone operates with that intent, but if it feels that way, that makes it hard. And I think in everything we're doing, we always want everyone to be able to bring their best, and looking at long term, right? Everyone brings their best when they feel, okay, well, okay, that was caught up, but in not, respectful and professional way, and,
Your point about the we'll get back to actually is actually a really important tool if it is happening, even unintentionally, right? Like if I'm like, Linda, you tell me, this, and this, and I think that's a way. And again, it's on the president, but I think also I would say on you as well, to just be like, we'll get back to you with that information, because again, we may be dealing with an issue that can't be resolved, or resolving it may not be in the best interest in that time.
all right, you're both done.
Okay, yeah. I feel like, and so I'm over here like,
No. Have your thoughts. Tell us why we're wrong.
Like talking about the idea that it's what you were talking about, but where I was coming from with it is
it prevents somebody from wanting to engage just in general. So if like the idea of like the gotcha, it really hampers somebody's desire to be vulnerable, or to want to contribute, or to want to even bring their best. If because everybody has an off day. So if that happened to be their off day and it's their off day in print, there's just no benefit in humiliation. It's wounding, and it's hampering, and it's stagnating for people, and it's just so it's like so just cringeworthy, you know. But I'll pick one.
We all pick one, then it becomes board norm number 7.
That's true. I also had terrible habit 16 that I was going between the two, minimizing public input, which I think is possibly equally offensive. So
Other than a little bit.
no, I'm good right now.
I mean, I think this is actually sort of analogous or parallel to going to you with an issue. I think that's true with a lot of these, is kind of having trust in the systems and the infrastructure. But the one about doing a favor in such a small community, people come to you with issues, and like hearing those people's concerns and issues out, and then also referring them to the right site person or eventually the administrator or district office is really key to make sure that you know what is happening in your community, but also engendering trust and agency in the actual people who work here. So.
What number was that one? It was asking for special treatment, right? Or
Do a favor, but it's all. I mean, I feel like they're all the same. 26.
The math class, right?
This is for other people asking you.
Oh.
Do something.
That one ties in middle with mine. I picked asking for special treatment, terrible habit number 7. And this is, I like how it starts with a quick phone call, right? And the trustee is realizing that they haven't heard back. She wants her daughter to be in the calculus honors class, right? And quickly picks up the phone and thinks, well, she'll just call the principal and just check in on it, and makes the call. But announces herself as the trustee, right? So that's kind of how, when the secretary answers the phone, when she has it's a trustee, she goes, oh no, of course I'll go and get her. She's available, but of course pull her out of an important meeting, right? Because now you've got a trustee on the phone. And then of course that leads into sort of a 2 to 3 minute conversation, very quick, but basically asking about it. And the way it ends is, the people saying, oh, we'll make sure, she gets into, you can count on that. And so, I think the options in there, right, I think were, go ahead with your call, but, don't announce yourself as a school board member. Tell Rita that you're speaking to her as a parent, not a school board member, and that you do not want any special treatment. Ask your spouse or partner, right, to make the call instead on your behalf, or just, from as the parent perspectives, or just wait and see what happens. Maybe your daughter will get into the class and no need for you to. So I think, all of those, options, I mean, could be, I think it starts with, we talk a lot about that whole thing of, conversation we've had is really, when you're wearing your board hat versus a parent hat. And I think that's the tricky balance you all, have to make, because you're, all parents, grandparents within, the community. The important piece of when you start that conversation, making sure it's known that you have your parent hat on, right? And you all have that right, absolutely. And I think it's really important about, I think sort of starting out, just creating that foundation upon which any conversation is about to take place. Knowing that, look, whoever it is, any staff member, they're going to have a hard time taking that hat off. They're still speaking to you that way. But I think if you sort of are laying the ground rules for that, it really allows permission, right, for them to kind of looking at you. I think, in this particular case, I think definitely, the ideal, option was maybe 3 or 4, maybe having, your spouse do that. I know many of you, have done that. And then of course, number 4, wait and see what happens. But I think of a lot of conversations we've had in that case, Elliot will come to me a lot of the time and say, oh, he doesn't want to say anything, because he's so worried that it's going to be perceived as well as president. His daughter's worried about, what the implications coming back on her. And I've had to tell no, you have it right as a parent. The appropriate, approach to this is, A, B, or C, whichever staff member it's appropriate in that case to go to, because you are still, parents, and that, in many cases, they should supersede right your role, as a trustee. I think it's just about knowing, and I appreciate even, or you're going to have that conversation, we can sort of talk it through and maybe brainstorm a little of, how we go about doing that. Sometimes it may even be that I can sort of preempt it or, forewarn, it's a conversation with the principal. I think just know that there are, alternate ways, to go about that. But I always approach that from the perspective of, you are a parent, and if there is an issue going on, the staff at the site need to know about it. And I think if it's something that's impacting your daughter or your son or your child, your grandchild, right? Make it known, right? That you can things are making a change, right? Not just for your child, but for all students.
It is such, I mean, I appreciate this one, and this is probably as you mentioned, one of the ones I struggle with the most, because I do think it is just inherently baked into the function of being a board member.
Mm-hmm.
There is no right, easy way to deal with this stuff, because when you are advocating for your child, that hat is either on the back of your head or in your back, but it's there. And so it does really lead to difficult decisions sometimes. And I appreciate your point there, and the role for systems is come to you first and say, hey, this is my concern. Here's what I'm looking to get out of it, or here's what I'm worried about and how to proceed. And I know we've had that discussion, and sometimes you'll suggest something to me and I'll be like, I can't do that. And so issues will get shelved, or, and it just highlights the difficulty just to say, this is almost not like I agree. Like if you're doing it, it's your table school board member to a degree, but there's some area underneath this that just highlights the difficulty in being a good board member and a good parent advocate in district. So we should also send our kids to a different district. But joking, very much joking.
Also, I'm not even saying this sarcastically, but I mean, at least with my limited experience with just 1.25 schools, there's been an appreciated lack of deference, or amongst the staff. Like maybe it's because I like dress in sweatpants most of the time or something, but I feel like we've just been doing their job and are good. I think our staff is good. I mean, I think this is all past, and I won't use names, but we laid off my son's teacher last year, and that was like terrible. But she got hired back. But she was a total pro, but I didn't know it, because everything was confidential. Anyways, it was a real interesting situation, and our staff are super professional all the way through. Appreciate them.
But it just highlights that conflict point. Like maybe there should be some CSBA or MCOE training on being a board member. It's a very difficult. I will just say, I think there are times in the past where I have not advocated for my kids, and I wish I had, in retrospect, because I was on the board. Right. And that makes sense, because I don't want to be a terrible, I don't want to be an example number, whatever it is. Right.
Yeah.
So it is.
Well, and to your point about having it be something that MCOE or CSBA teaches, but teaches from the lens of not what teaches truly about like the difficulty and what the balance actually could really look like. Because, going the other extreme is awful, and going to the other extreme is also awful,
An idea for
Yeah, because it's something that I think every parent or grandparent, anyone that's on the board that has somebody that they love in the district, it's something that eventually comes up,
Request for a CSBA session at the next meeting next year, potentially, yeah.
I think, one of the conferences I went to years ago, they have brought that up as an issue. So it's, you know, so common, yeah, that, so many board members are parents, you know. I did tell you the story about my kid, right? It was my kid that was a problem, not me. Where my kid told the high school teacher, yeah, he was not being a good guy. And teacher took him out of class. And he told her, like, my mom's on the school board and she can get you fired. Luckily, I knew that teacher. I mean, we were kind of friends, and she didn't, you know, she probably said, I got a strong union and that ain't gonna happen.
But that, I mean, that is how government should work, like each division should be able to do their job without fear of,
Yeah.
I mean, that, at least in this district, I mean, I think that is another good strength that, I mean, I know this was a while ago, but your friend slash the teacher went to you, not cowing in fear or anything, but just like, hey, your son is.
Yeah, I don't know if she did go to me. I forget how I found out. Probably my son told me, thinking like he was or something.
Mom, you gotta fire this person.
Yeah, well, that, you know, he had a lot of issues. And so those 2 years in high school, junior and senior year, there were a lot of stuff going on that I had to just be step back from, you know. And yeah, the only thing the one thing I remember telling them, because they had, you know what a student study team is? That's where they-
Wait, what is it?
Okay, that's where you get interrogated
Oh,
by 10 of your teachers and a counselor and your parent. Like, if you've been bad, okay, they bring you in.
it's still used.
Huh?
Is it, it's still around?
Well,
That's not the purpose of an SST. Then. Experience the okay, all right with
Yes, and so they asked
Yeah.
that they were gonna have a study team with my son. And so they called me because the parent goes too, you know. And yeah, so they're gonna first tell all the positive things about him, but then they're gonna get to the real reason why we're here, the negative things, right? And so I just said, no, I'm coming, but not my son. He's not coming. Because, I was, when I did my student teaching, I'll never forget having a student study team with a 7th grader or something, and they're all sitting there around, and that kid bolted out of the room. I thought, oh, what are we doing here? Can't be 10 against 1, you know? So anyway, yeah, that's something to think about, like how you.
It's the same issue, different lens in a way,
Yeah.
almost, right, or similar issue. If you're still left to present.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know.
Well, at first I was gonna do the what was it? Lost my place. I had one, and then I realized it's kind of piggybacking on what you guys already did. So then I picked this other one, which is when you speak for the board. Which one is that here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, it's number 9 on.
okay,
page
number
9.
9. Okay. Yeah. Because, and I know this board has done a good job of making sure everybody understands their role as far as, you know, speaking to certainly a reporter calls you like, you know, hey, what's your opinion? You say, call the board president, you know, and all of that. But I do think that practically speaking, because somebody asked me, so why did the SRO get not re-upped, you know? And I thought, well, I gotta tell this person what our discussion was. And I didn't feel that was, I mean, I'm not gonna say call the board president. You know, I mean, I think in those situations, it's okay to say, this is, you know, the board considered this, and these were the reasons, and this is what's happening.
You could send them the link to the highlight that really.
Practically speaking, you know, you will be approached by by your friends, you know, definitely by your friends, you know, they're gonna say, hey, come on, like what was going on? So, you know, and I think it's okay to give them some sense of what happened without it being a problem.
Yeah, and I think especially though, it's also if you do it out in that role as a board member, not as the board, like, you know, you could say, here's my view on how the discussion went. Right, rather than saying, oh, well, the board feels this is no longer a relevant thing for the district, right? Like just, you can do it, you can do your take on it, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but you can also report that we vote, this is how the vote went. Because that's just factual, yeah.
I think it's also like problematic when you're speaking for the board preemptively or not reporting on something, but you know.
Oh, before something comes up for a vote.
Yeah.
That is problematic, yeah. That's when you say, come to the board meeting.
That's right. Speak your mind.
Yeah.
Come to the board meeting, here are some sentences you can say that would help support my point. Joking.
No, I've never done that.
That's that is a different one of the chapters, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, yeah, it's advocating for your own, garner public support.
I don't know, just going back to that speaking for the board, I think, you know, there've been some situations, right? I think we've had to. For my time, there was one situation like that. I think when we know it's something that carries weight and there's heaviness about it and something is going to go out, right? The ability for something is going to be crafted, right? It's input, I think, we work together on a couple of those things with them, sharing the rest of you. And I think, you know, the biggest piece for that is before that's sent out, that there's just that sense of confidence. Not saying one thing and you have one board member going, well, hold on, no, that's not.
That also gives the language that anyone can, that is how you can speak for the board, because you're saying this is what our district communication is.
It gives us talking points. I think that's what the value in like the statement that you gave recently was. It then gave me a roadmap of what to stick to if people ask questions and just kind of, yeah. So I find it valuable, or found that one valuable.
Very good, and I found it there as well to make discussions. So we're on to our really last item where we're looking at, you know, just next steps, and I've got on there to schedule a board self-evaluation or training during the October date. October 23, we have 2 trustees who may not be able to make out the question. Lou is not available on the November date. We have a special meeting. We have a couple options. We could, I could check with him about it. December we always have 2 meetings. We could make one of those governance, or we look at maybe a date in October or November that.
October is also.
I mean, my November is a bit of a mess, but that's just me personally, the beginning of November. So like the problem is I worry we would get into later.
And then December is pretty much, it's already
Later
full,
November is
right.
Thanksgiving too.
Yeah. The sooner the better, I would say. I mean, and we have momentum. We've been doing this work, so we can.
I will say Lou was really impressed that we'll be meeting by ourselves. So, wow. So, yeah.
Did you tell him we're sharing everything we said in closed session with the recording?
He just laughed. Uh-huh.
Joking for the
Right, so
record.
we want to look at October, is that what I'm hearing?
Like the last week, that Thursday, the 30th?
Might be out of town.
Okay, maybe we do like a doodle poll or something to find dates that
So,
they're available and then we can
See-
see what
yeah,
works.
it probably makes sense for me to get dates from them first.
Yeah.
And then we'll send those out, which is what
See, we
how
can,
about we do that? Yeah.
I like that.
Okay.
Oh,
No, I mean, there could be one of them, right? I mean, they've just got that.
Just wondered.
That's a good point. We could look at that as an option. to Consider.
If one of them's available, but then other not, right? Not to limit.
mhm.
Put October 19th, Senate for.
To be determined.
Right, I will send out some dates that work, right? I mean, if worst comes to worst, we do have that December, you know, we have 2 meetings in December, so. We absolutely can't, right? But there's and I hear what you're all saying, and that feels like. We do have CSBA interim with that, but no, we're not. Changes. All right, more to come on that one. Full break. It's probably why you're free. Uh-huh.
Hey, yeah, yeah.
At all. Uh-huh.
You guys want to come down to Big Sur campground? We can do it there.
But in the meantime, I will, you know, ask for some tools and start gathering some information from them, right? That we can maybe start. Right, as we get ready for that.
And maybe share the idea of that public
Yes,
opinion
I
box
would
as a
definitely
separate
do.
bucket.
Maybe.
But something we want to do maybe. Might be like, don't do it or whatever.
Uh-huh, exactly, right, exactly. Yeah. All right, so
So-
check this reinforce our next one.
Then we go back. Yeah.
Back.
So we have a homework assignment.
Um,
We have to go back and I don't know, we don't all have to do it. I just have to go back. Stay here.
And watch you make that long walk.
Play public right now. I put candy on everyone's door.
Oh, you did. Oh, you're so cute. Oh my gosh, that'll be a nice hello next time in the morning. That's great.
You're wondering.
Thank you all again. It's 9:13 and we're gaveling out this special meeting to be back in person on October 2nd.
Matthew.
Right.
Great
Thank
job.
you.